Right, hello everyone, and welcome to this event on finding your path into the film industry. I'm Toby, one of Glasgow Film Festival's young selectors. I'm joined with my colleague Andrea, and today we're going to be exploring exciting ways and different paths that young people can get into the film industry. And we'll be getting some insight from three panellists here. We've got Paul Mackey from SAA Film. We've got James Wilson, who is the Director of Broadcasting at City College Glasgow. And we've got Kate Foamy from Screen Skills. So I guess our first question would be, well, thanks everyone for turning up. Our first question to our panellists is, could you just introduce yourself and your organisation and maybe steps you take to help young people get into the industry? So we'll go to you, Paul, first. Thank you.
So SE is a 2-year condensed undergraduate course mainly, which deals with essentially a very practical outlook on filmmaking. So we normally, what would be a 4-year or a 3-year course, you will do in 2. So that just means you essentially miss out your amazing summer holidays that you normally get. You get time off, but our idea is to keep you fully engaged with constant practical projects. So there's multiple throughout each trimester that we do, and essentially trying to give you skills to work in different areas. So we're not just sticking just to cinematography or editing or writing or whatever. We are trying to give you a broad overview as much as we can to make you a good working practitioner in the industry. So we do delve into obviously some academic elements which are kind of needed for the course, but we are pretty much fully practical. So to try and get our students and keep them kind of interested and motivated, our idea is not only getting them to do their work within, you know, the courses that we do, but also we like to set out amazing guest speakers to come in from the industry, people that we've worked with. Our biggest thing is we stay working in the industry in order to keep our students motivated to continue, not that you get to a certain age and then that's you. So that's kind of where we're at just now.
Great. James, what about yourself?
So I work at City of Glasgow College. We've got a number of TV courses that I really ought to come clean and admit in the exciting world of the Glasgow Film Festival. Telly is what we do. There are so many kind of skill set crossovers between high-end television production and film production that it makes some kind of sense. And much like Paul, what we focus on is practical skill sets and helping people develop skills, production skills mainly in what I like to describe as a technologically rich environment, which means there's tons of kit. We've got an exciting big studio, and our students engaged in production projects all the way through. I always feel I'm delighted to be here. By the way, thank you very much for listening to me. I'm always conscious I'm a bit of a qualification salesman, and there's so much more to this conversation that I hope that we can get through as we go along. You know, the college is about giving people practical skills in production, helping folk work with each other, which I think is really crucial as well. It's been so hard over the last couple of years. One of the reasons our television courses are successful, I think, is because it's about people working in crews and programme teams, and I'm really, really delighted that that's. We've never stopped, but we're kind of pulling people. Just in the last couple of weeks, it's got so much better as folk have been engaged in production activity and actually getting on with it. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, James. And Kate, what about yourself?
I work with Screen Skills, who are the industry-wide, UK-wide training body. We provide training for people who want to get into the industry, people who are already in the industry and want career development or to step up to the next role. We provide mentoring, we have bursaries. We do a lot of work with colleges and universities. We have the Screen Skills Select kind of industry stamp for university and college courses to show that we've worked with the colleges and the universities and agreed that they're great courses to take you into the industry. We work with schools as well. We basically want to spread the word that the screen industries are really busy right now. Scotland itself is really, really busy right now. And it's a great time to want to get into the industries, into film, into TV, because we need you. And it's a very different time. It's not always been like that. It wasn't like that when I started in production. I used to do script supervising and production managing. So it's a really great time. So I've got my work cut out. I'm the representative in Scotland for Screen Skills. It's quite a new role. We've only been here really with feet on the ground since November, but I'm hoping to do more and more, and just to let as many people as possible know that we're here and we want to help you in your training and to get into the industry.
Thank you, Katie. So, what do you wish you have known before entering the film industry, or in general, and the way, like, what do you think the way that it will affect when you were applying for jobs? Like, if you have known something beforehand.
Everybody?
Yeah, you can start if you want.
Okay. I suppose I'm in a funny position where I was in the industry as a crew member, but that was a long time ago. A lot of people told me when I was looking to go to university, not to do a vocational course, not to do anything to do with film and TV, just do a general course, and I ended up doing English studies. And that has been fine. I could have done. These days, I think you can do a vocational course, you can do much more. There are amazing courses out there that are hands-on, that feed into the industry. I was told, this was 20 years ago, that courses weren't particularly relevant and you'll just be trained on the job when you start anyway, so you might as well do something general like English. So I'm not sure my experience helps people today, but I would comment that there's no one way into the industry. You don't have to study, but also studying is great because there are so many courses out there that really feed into the industry and what we need as an industry.
Thank you, Katie. What about you, James?
I suppose that the one biggest thing that I wish I'd known was that my ignorance was vast. When I really didn't know very much at all. I was, like many young people, excited by film. It's a long time ago. It seemed a very foreign, very exotic thing, and I wanted to be a film director, which was foolish and lacking in self-knowledge. I think I don't think I was ever going to be a film director. It wasn't right for me. If I'd known myself better, I would have realised I should have been a sound recordist or a sound dubbing mixer. I would have loved that craft role. It still excites me now. I love teaching it. That's kind of what gets me. That's what gets me going. So I suppose the one biggest thing is there are so many more people working in the industry than directors and writers. And what we do at college is try and teach people all these different skills. And the bigger the production, the bigger the ratio between director and crew is, and there's tons of crew work and tons of programme work. So that's what I wish I'd known.
That's amazing. Thanks. What about you, Paul?
Quite similar. I think one of the first sort of main jobs I started off in was the locations department. And what no one really tells you before you go in is that there's so many other transferable skills that you can use in the film industry. You know, from just practical physical skills you might have had from working in a bar, or from, you know, logistical skills you might have had from working, you know, as an AV tech or something like that. And I think everyone goes in thinking, you know, you need to go in with these certain skills, or you need to be very specific about what you're doing, and that is all good to be specific and have a kind of ideal goal, but I think broadening your horizon and not kind of assuming that if you go into one department that's you stuck in that department for the next 20 years or more. And I kind of jumped about a bit, and this is kind of again feeds into what we kind of teach our students now, which is that you might have an aspiration to be a writer, director, a cinematographer, you know, an editor, but also a lot of the kind of first jobs you're going to get are going to be probably at a kind of lower end of that. Even if you want to be an editor, you can be an edit runner, but that includes, you know, just being an affable person, kind of being able to speak to people, communication. So those kind of things that you don't need big super skills, but you do need to be able to take what you already have and apply it, whether it be to a course that you're doing, or again if you're getting some experience. So not seeing there being big doors that are closed off to you, because there really isn't. It's actually easier to get into the film industry than most other industries.
So just expanding on that a little bit, Paul, you just talked about having sort of transferable skills.
Yes.
Are there any mindsets and attitudes you think are vital to any job within media, whether it be film or television, that you see sort of common threads that maybe students should have?
Resilience is one. I think one thing that I still tell students and even people just that I work alongside is like failure, embrace failure. Like, you know, everyone talks about success as being the key word, but to me you learn more from failure than you ever do from success. So I think being able to go in with the resilience of you're going to fail, and failure doesn't have to mean you're going to completely flunk it and have to go and restart, but it just means that you're not going to get to this point you want to be, so you might have to change the route slightly. So I think going in with that, and also I think communication is a big thing, like I spoke about earlier, like being able to talk to people, whether it be through networking or again other departments and things like that. Like it allows you, you know, even if you're quite insular, and I thought originally I was quite insular before I started film, and then you realise that just talking to people and getting to know people is probably one of the biggest skills you can have in order to climb your ladder and go through. So I would say that, but yeah, your attitude towards it and having a positive attitude, I think, will always go for you, because a lot of the times whenever I've even been hiring crew for jobs, someone might not have the best set of skills or have the best degree or have the best whatever, but if they've got a good attitude towards the job and they're willing, then to me I would happily hire them, because they can learn and they'll push themselves to learn.
And Jane, would you say that's similar within the TV industry?
Yeah, I don't have any argument with the description of transferable skills. Working with others, resilience is really important, because it's not easy. It's not an easy gig. I think most of the roles, as far as I understand, are not without their challenge. I think a couple of things spring to mind of what people have told me in the past when we've had industry speakers in. Very bluntly, don't be a dick. I don't know if that's too straightforward, but you know, I think it's a people business, and people want to work with people who they want to be with. So that's easier said than done. And do the job you've got. You know, if you've got a role on a production, that's the job you need to do. Don't do the one above or two above it, because you're there to do a job.
And the same question for you, Kate. You've had a lot of different roles within the media industry. Are there any common threads that you've noticed across them all?
In terms of sort of qualities in people?
Yeah.
We were doing, Screen Skills has a scheme each year called Trainee Finder. It might be worth you knowing about it for the next time we're recruiting, which will be later on this year. And some of you might have actually applied, I don't know. But we have this training scheme where we have a cohort of trainees across a number of different departments for drama, for film and TV. Because of the way that we work, we have a lot of contact with the productions that happen across the UK, and we place our trainees on big productions, film and TV productions. And I've just come away from the interviews for, to give an example, the costume department, and I had such fun. I felt like I'd been hit by a bus after interviewing 48 people, but there were 48 people who had such a spark, such a passion, such resilience, they'd been on a journey already, they'd done their research, they'd realised that they wanted to do not just costume or fashion, but costume in drama, and they'd done their research and they'd found out how that differs to fashion, the etiquette on set, the way the system works. You can go from workroom to the truck, there's continuity to be considered, and they'd really done their research, and the passion really came across, and those who were successful are those who just showed that spark. So I'd say that never do yourself down if you've got that real nice fire in your belly. Don't think, oh, it's not for me, or, you know, nobody's ever going to choose me. Keep that spark in your eyes, because it's spotted, and people, you know, people who are hiring in the industry really, really value that determination and that passion. Yeah.
Thank you. Related to like skills, do you think there are any specific skills that can be learned only like through a vocational course? And to those who more like specific film undergraduate degrees, do you have any advice on how they might get some practical experience?
So I think you need access to the equipment to learn how to use it. If you think about it in a kind of really traditional tool use mindset, you know, just in the old days, a master would have an apprentice, and together they pass on the skills and all the rest of it. It seems very old-fashioned, but you still need to get your hands on the kit. And I suppose my advice would be to think carefully about where you're going to study and learn to ensure that you've got access to that equipment. And I think, you know, having access to the equipment and the people to work in teams with is probably crucial to developing certainly the production skill sets that are involved in that kind of screen production process. The thing that strikes me, Kate's last answer, about fashion and seamstresses and scenic plasterers and joiners and riggers and so many other things. And rigging, you can, you know, a lot, when BBC were looking for riggers a couple of years ago, they came to the college asking to speak to construction guys, because the construction guys teach folk how to put up scaffolding, how to run wires and all that kind of carry on. So you don't have to go to a specific screen thing to learn useful skills in the screen industry. So there's so many different ways into it.
Do you think the same, Paul?
Yeah, I actually quite like what James was saying about construction, because I worked, when I've done features, I love working with all these different other departments that are kind of, again, non-essential in terms of what we teach. You know, we don't teach rigging, or we don't teach, you know, we teach about lighting, but just like, you know, we're not making electricians as such. So I do like the idea that, you know, that can be learnt elsewhere, but also can be something that's within other courses. It depends on what you're looking for. But like right now, everyone's got one of these in their pocket. It's a phone, and I got a great opportunity to work on Avengers Infinity War when it was here, and I got a chance to meet Joe Russo, who was one of the directors after it. And his sort of piece of advice, whenever he was talking about, you know, like getting into the industry, regardless of what it is, he's like, especially if you're wanting to make films, you know, so maybe if you want to be like a director or a writer, is there's no barrier. You know, you've got something in your pocket to do it. We've all got laptops or phones or, you know, tablets or something where we can write, whether it be on a Word document. Like, there is no excuse not to do these things. But then as it gets into one of these kind of more, you know, specific territories, then yeah, you do have to, you know, I would say going to learn about it. You know, you could easily teach yourself on YouTube, or you could, you know, look at sort of, you know, articles about it. But one of the things I've found with our own students is that it's the relationship we can build with them, because they have a problem that they don't know what the problem is. So they come to us and explain it, whereas trying to type that into an internet browser can sometimes lead you down like a rabbit hole of trying to find out what, you know, how do I fix this lens, or what's the settings on this camera, or dolly systems jibs. You know, that's something that, you know, you can't necessarily buy everything like that. You know, you can buy a camera, you can buy some lenses, but again, it's the quality that you can get out of some of these courses in terms of the kit. And you know, we've got like a Netflix approved camera on our campus, so that's kind of one of those things that we pride ourselves on. But we're also saying, well, just because we've got good quality kit, it's about the practitioner that's using it that will make it a good quality piece. So, you know, you can have nice images, but I think that's part of the learning you can get from these courses is to try and hone those skills a bit more.
Thank you. Anything to add, Kate?
I think it's all been mentioned, really. It just depends on what you want to go into. So I would say it's good to do the research. But you don't need to know what you want to do before you try it. Try it. Go and ask for experience. You know, unless someone says no, keep asking every few months, maybe weeks. You know, keep in contact and network. And maybe once you know what it is you want to do, you can learn a lot on the job as well. If you haven't studied, you know, you don't have to necessarily have studied. But some jobs, you know, electricians have to have certain certificates. It's a lot of costume designers have gone to art school and studied, but you don't have to have done that. Yeah.
So for a lot of people just starting out in the industry, some of the ideas can seem a little bit intangible, such as, you know, dream big and be a storyteller. For people who maybe haven't had access to courses and things like that, but want to get involved, what do you think are the first practical steps for getting ideas that are in the head out into the real world that you've seen?
That's quite a hard question.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I suppose I think to repeat what Paul said, got a phone in your pocket, do it, you know, and I think that hasn't changed, you know. If you've got however you dress it up, if you've got a story to tell, a desire to make that content, there isn't really anything stopping you. Generally, I think I don't have the best phone in the world, but I could shoot, edit, and deliver something or other in a day or two that would hopefully interest somebody. That might be pushing it a bit, but you know, I think you know that'd be the main thing. I think there's a couple of things. Just think about the last question. So you can just do it. You can also look up and look at what's happening around you. The National Film and Television School publish a bunch of courses, and if you look at them, you'll see where the industry gaps are. Accountants and production coordinators, not sexy roles, but they get to hang out with sexy people, you know, and there's more. It's a big industry with lots of different roles, and yeah, and again, this is a bit telly, but if you look at the Royal Television Society Scotland's online award ceremony from last year, it's a 1 minute, it's an hour long, it's a long thing, it's an hour long, but in that hour you'll see, I think, the 46 best productions made in Scotland last year, or the 46 nominated productions, all sorts of things, tons of factual. But I think that's really helpful, because then you'll get the idea of what's going on. Certainly in the television industry, there's other ways to find out with film, but you know, you can see, so look up and see what's going on and make stuff. My answer. Thank you.
So just based on that, Kate and Paul, have you got any advice for people who maybe have jobs in other areas but still want to nurture this creativity, and how to balance and find the time to do both?
Yeah, well, to start with, we work with not just people who are wanting to get into the industry who are young, it's people who maybe have always wanted to do it and never thought it was for them. We work with veterans at the moment. We've got a course for veterans who have transferable skills, who we're introducing them to locations as an example of an area where they could look. They don't have to, but we've got a course for them. Also accountants on the day-to-day, sort of general corporate accountants or whatever, welcoming them to the film industry and the TV industry, and introducing them to production accountancy, not just the job, but actually the industry as well, because it's quite a different world to the maybe 9 to 5 that they've been used to. In terms of those doing things, you know, keeping a job going, yeah, it's tricky, but people do it, and it is possible. There's a lot of things that you can do part-time or training-wise. You can go, in answer to the sort of first part of your question, to the Screen Skills website, and you can start a profile there so that you can direct people to what you do, what your skills are, what the courses are that you've done. We've got a lot of free online courses on there, a lot of advice, how to do CVs, how to network, how to approach people for your first job, so that maybe while you're holding down that job to keep you going, you can be really nurturing those skills, practical skills for the specific jobs, but also the sort of more broad soft skills, as they're called, as well. And just keep trying until you get to that point where it's time to jump, because you've got that network, you've got people who know you, and you've maybe done a weekend job and helped out on a short film, and then that cameraman is talking to you saying he's going to do a drama for 6 months on Shetland, do you want to come? You know, that's how people do go from one job to another. It's same, you know, in film as well. Yeah, I think that's everything.
Great, thank you very much.
Can I just?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So what Kate's got in front of her is the Film and TV Dramas Ideas to Screen pamphlet, as published by Screen Skills, which answers that question specifically. The other, when I was talking about the RTS and NFTS, Screen Skills website is fabulous. The careers maps, which are big pull-out posters you can put in your bedroom wall should you so desire, are really good ways of understanding the many different roles that are involved in scripted, but also in unscripted production. We've recently, one of the things I did before I came today was I tried to find out how much money to justify myself being here and talking about telly. 15 billion spend, 15 billion gross value added by screen industries in the UK, or 13.5 to be precise. 4.5 of it was in high-end film and television drama. That means almost 2/3 of that 15 billion are in unscripted and factual telly. And the same skills that we're talking about, or many of the skills that we're talking about here, are used in these areas. There's been a huge investment in Glasgow in the Kelvin Hall multi-camera studio, which has just taken off right now. They've done the first production coming out of that, which was Screw, prison drama made by STV for Channel 4. They've left that set up in the hope, and it's a big set, they've left it up in the hope that it'll be recommissioned for another series or two. But there's a lot of shiny floor space in that. I love shiny floor entertainment television. But this is a big studio, and there's going to be lots of work there. So, and again, those crossover skills, and there are so many places to look if you're interested. And I think one of the things that, to come back to your earlier question about the attributes, you really need to work at it. I think when I was thinking of coming here, I think you guys are doing the first thing, you're here, but you know, it takes effort to keep on top of so many things.
I should mention a couple of other things as well while I remember. I've just come from and wiped away the tears and the smudged mascara from the Little Pictures Gmac initiative screening that was just on a few hours ago. And from what I gathered, they were saying that this is a scheme that has just started. Gmac here in Glasgow are a brilliant resource as well for getting involved in film, learning film, helping on shoots, getting that experience. And this scheme is the first I think they've done for about 12 years, so it's really great to see Gmac here at the festival. The other thing that I was going to say is that at Screen Skills we have to keep on our toes because production roles are changing. They say that your average 5-year-old today, the job that they'll do when they leave university or leave school doesn't necessarily exist right now. And it's been quite a similar thing with production. We've got a research department who keep on top of the developing roles in production. We've had a lot of research recently on virtual production, the roles of which aren't necessarily fixed. Oh, I do this job in virtual, I do this job. Everybody's kind of been finding their feet, and the workflow has been different from one production to another. As the sort of roles are starting to emerge, we're doing that research so that we can identify those roles for those who might not even know that role is for them. And we're putting as much as we can on our website, all the job profiles. So if you do have a look on our website, you'll see a wealth of roles that you may not have even thought about, but you might go, oh my goodness, this is for me. You know, I might have thought I want to do this, but I want to have a look at that as well. So that's worth looking at.
Great.
Thank you, Katie. So I'm curious, and I think our audience is curious too. What are the biggest misconceptions you hear about the film industry from young filmmakers? Paul?
I don't think I hear these a lot from young filmmakers, but I think there's definitely a glamorization of the film industry in general, which kind of, I suppose, does come from misconceptions that, you know, young filmmakers get. Everyone knows it's long hours. We all say these words, oh, it's long hours, it's hard work, but no one really understands what that particularly means. And I think the fact is that, yeah, it's a brilliant industry to be in, but at the end of the day, it's also just a job. You know, we do some crazy hours, but there's other industries that do that too. So I think the first thing is glamorization of it. It's a brilliant job to be in. It's a really, really amazingly rewarding job to be in. And also money. I mean, there is amazing money in film. I think we wouldn't all be here if we didn't hope there was that couple of £1 million to get from it. But I think, again, there is living wages within the film industry. There's might be slightly higher than most other jobs, but you're getting paid for the extra hours you're putting in, the extra kind of manpower you're having to add to it. So I think the kind of going in with I know a lot of people, whenever I first started out, were going in and leaving within about 5 days of their first job because they didn't have the kind of outline of what it was. And this is what I think Screen Skills is doing really well, and all these other places, is the training that's going into it. I think training's a big part of it, regardless of whether you do it at a university, you do it at college, you do it at, you know, Screen Skills or any of these other opportunities that come for you. I think understanding, going in with your eyes wide open is a massive part of it, because at the end of the day you're going to be standing on a really freezing cold set. I did Outlaw King on the side of a mountain, wind's hitting you, rain's hitting you, and suddenly you're like, this isn't fun. But there was some fun stuff, cool stuff going on. There was horses, there was battles, there was all these things, and you get to see that. But I think going in with the fact is not every day is going to be like a behind the scenes featurette, which is an hour out of a 101 day shoot. And the worst thing is when you hear day one of 100, and then you slowly, it counts down and it feels like it's never ending. And sometimes you feel like you're kind of trapped inside of that, but you know, it's just like, again, any job you might do for 20 plus years, you know, the thing with film is, you know, it seems like an intense time, and that's all it is 100-day jobs or 60-day jobs. And I think people going in with their eyes wide open with it, I think, but again, it goes back to that positive attitude. You know, you'll face the different elements of it, and I think as long as people don't go in expecting too much initially, and they just try and open themselves to gain as much as they can from it, I think you can't really go wrong, I don't think.
Anything to add? James or Katie?
I had fun. It's a small world, and I live not far from the field that Outlaw King was shot in.
Yeah.
And I saw the horse. I saw the guys riding up and down with the horses, smoking a fag, leading another horse. It was quite entertaining. God, that looked like a tough shoot. It was in November, I think. And it was,
November, right across. Yeah.
And I think I spoke to Pal Ian, who was a sheep farmer,
Nice.
who said the makers were it was lots of extras, and the extras looked really miserable because they were having such a hard time, which was just exactly what they were meant to be looking like. So in a way they were delighted, but it was hard. I suppose in terms of I suppose we all bring our own individual misconceptions. I don't know, whatever they are. I think we've always kind of cracked it in terms of dismissing the glamour. The kind of thrill, in a way, to my mind, is in the craft and the ability to use your skills to make something fabulous, but it's not always glamorous.
It's true. You do get lots of stories. It's great for meeting your mates in the pub later if they're still there and you haven't had a late shoot. When they say, "What did you do at work today?" The answers to those questions can vary day to day. I remember a mate of mine saying, "Oh, I was holding a rope, and on the end of the rope was dangling Nicole Kidman." Like, no pressure there. That was Paddington, I think you said. So yeah, but misconceptions. I think these days it's been a conception, and correct until quite recently, that if you want to do well in film, you have to go to London or elsewhere, you know, LA. Not the case so much anymore. You know, there's so much happening in Scotland that there is work here, and it is incredibly busy. The big films are coming here. There are homegrown films here, and there's a lot of dramas being made here. So that's a new misconception, I think, that you don't necessarily have to go down. You can work and go from one thing to another thing to another thing, because, you know, crew are really in demand. I think there's the misconception on two sort of areas of the two ends of the scale, with people wanting to get into the industry of, I want to direct, I'm going to go and direct, and come away from studying or, you know, getting into the industry, and you can't go straight to directing, which I know that everybody's probably pretty aware of, that you start from a trainee role or being a runner and learning the craft and learning not just how to direct, but how the whole team works together like a well-oiled machine, usually, and how important that is to not just think, oh, I'm going to go and direct. People do, and, you know, that should not be ruled out at all. If you've got that passion, go for it, do that. But to have that sort of understanding that you can learn an awful lot by going in on a trainee level. On the other end of the scale is, film's not for me. Nobody in my family has ever done this. You have to have a degree to do this. I'm not from the right background to do this. You know, the screen industries have traditionally been pretty male upper middle class, seen as being very impenetrable, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And at Screen Skills, we're working really hard to change that. You know, we are working really hard on diversity in film and HGTV. If you haven't watched Jack Thorne's McTaggart lecture from last year's TV festival, watch it. We're working with Jack Thorne off the back of that. He gave a lecture about disabled people's experiences in the film and TV industry and the difficulties they've had of getting into the industry. And we've been working with him and his organisation, Underlying Health Condition, which is a great name, because they named it that because they think our TV industry and film industry has an underlying health condition. And we need to look at ourselves and see how can we be more inclusive, how can we put down those barriers. Do we have to insist that everybody has a driving license as the first thing that we look at on the CV? You know, when maybe some disabled people can't drive, but they've got amazing skills. And we're working hard with him to really open up the industry. We need people, we need to crew, we need people from all sorts of backgrounds. And it's looking like things are changing, but I think that's a misconception when people think, oh, it's not for me, you know, I couldn't possibly. Go for it. Don't ever let that lodge in your head, because it's an open door.
Great, thank you very much.
Just very briefly.
Yes.
The guys looking after the horses in Outlaw King were from Spain. That highlights two things. One, there's a shortage of horse wranglers for the Scottish film industry. But also there are tremendous opportunities for travel and excitement.
Yes.
Because you can carve out a career in Scotland, but one of the fabulous things about it is you can take your talents far and wide, which is a good thing, and come back better if that's your ambition.
Fantastic. Well, everyone should learn horse wrangling. There we have it. We're going to open the floor now to just a few questions from the audience. So if anyone has anything they want to know, now's your chance. We'll take the guy in the front.
So I've started making some films this year, and I'm wondering, is there anywhere in particular, if you're trying, I'm a big fan of this whole learning by doing thing, and is there anywhere in particular that you should or shouldn't put your films in terms of getting them out there? For example, like YouTube, is that a bad idea that I don't understand why it's bad to put your film for free up on YouTube, or is that a great idea to get eyeballs on it, Vimeo, all this sort of stuff? Is there any sort of?
I honestly, I genuinely think that that's like such a, it's such a loaded question, and it's a really good question because it's actually one that needs to really be addressed. And I think that it depends on what you're wanting to get out of it. Essentially, the biggest thing is, if you're making films for film festivals, and a lot of film festivals will probably state some form of rider that you can't have your films premiere or be online before it goes to their festival. So if you're putting in film festivals, there might be a reason why you can't specifically upload things online, but I think it depends on what you're trying to attract, who you're trying to attract in terms of audience space. Also, if it's something you've made over a weekend, then absolutely maybe put it in festivals, but maybe that's something that, again, it's taking you probably less time, less man-hours, something that can go up immediately and be seen by your friends, family, wider community. But if it's something, again, you spent a bit of money on, you probably want it to go to a festival potentially that can gain a bit more traction. But I think it should be determined by your specific ideal of what you want for the film and where you hope to see it go.
All right, great. Have we got any more questions? I'll take the guy over on that.
I think it was you, Kate, who said that most 5-year-olds today, that when they are graduating, the jobs won't exist, that they don't exist now. I was wondering if you guys could talk about maybe how the technology is going to impact the industry in the upcoming years and in the future.
I'm no expert, and I'd need someone from our research department at the moment, but we had some great research done by our film department in the virtual roles, and lots of visits to studios where they've got the video screens, not so much the green screens, but the video screens where it can look like you're in a cathedral. There's even a screen above you, and there's even if there's a sunset, for example, on the screen, that the actual image of the sun, it can produce an amount of light. It's a sort of light in itself, if that makes sense. I'm making a hash of this explanation. We've got some trainees at the moment on the Anansi Boys, and they've got a lot of virtual stuff going on, and we've got our trainees are in the virtual roles, and my job this week is literally to get to know what exactly they're doing because they know way more than I do, and to learn from them. So I think virtual is definitely the area where things are really, really developing. When I was a script supervisor, probably the last thing I did was maybe about 12, 13 years ago. The role of DIT, I didn't know what that was when I came back to the industry, because for me, that's a very new role, and I don't think I could explain it particularly well, other than that it's very, very needed digital sort of marrying the, forgive me and correct me if I'm wrong, marrying the actual physical production to the digital, making sure there's someone there on set, sort of marrying that flow and that process. Have I got that right?
Yeah. I want to add that to our. I think that description needs to go on our slides now. It's.
But yeah, there's so much, so many new roles, and as an industry, it's kind of like the wonder of making films. And if you've made a film, there'll be many moments, and I bet you can tell me stories of the way that you got that shot, and you used stuff that was to hand. You know, it wasn't necessarily big technology, but I remember a film student who was telling his life story, and it started off with a puppet of a stork delivering him as a baby, and he needed the stork to go through clouds, but he couldn't do clouds, he didn't have dry ice, so he just lit a fire in his front garden. And it kind of gave the impression he got the smoke and it looked like clouds. You know, there's that sort of ingenuity that happens in the industry, and out of that come the sort of more formalised roles, the more formalised ways of doing things. But there are still the nice sort of tricks of the trade that we have.
I'm sure there's a cloud plugin in Premiere.
That was a long time ago, yeah.
And
he's now doing Doctor Who,
yeah.
and he's pulling John Bishop through big tubes and things like that, so he's still doing that sort of stuff.
I think in answer to the first question, again, going back to money, it was 14.5 billion, whatever it was, in film and television. I think there's more in games, and it's the kind of synergies between gaming technology and production processes, and which is partly the composition and the marrying of CGI and real action. But I suppose that's where I'd be looking. I think I realise I'm quite old, and who knows what's going to happen next. But I think that kind of, and your digital image technician, which I think is what DIT stands for, or digital imaging, I can never quite remember, or the data wrangling process, which is all IT essentially. It's just moving stuff from cameras to hard drives to computers. That kind of computing power, I think, is a big deal.
I think as well, we've got an animation department at SE, and it's hard to get us as a film department to work with animation, because animation in itself takes a long time, especially with first years who are kind of just learning. But one thing we have been exploring, which all came through the pandemic, which is kind of, I suppose, where we're heading now, is virtual productions in terms of virtual editing, virtual colour grading, which I've been using on my own stuff outside of this, and we've been trying to implement it inside our studies. So trying to have like Frame.io and things like that, where you can have your editor working in their own house and you can be elsewhere, and it allows our students who, for example, during the pandemic, who were stuck in other countries, to actually still experience and use our computers and our technology, but through a digital means, so we could basically share our screens with them, and they could work off our computers and still produce amazing work. And I think that's going to continue on, right, to the stages that Kate's talking about.
We've got time for one more question. We'll take the guy here, just in the middle.
This is just kind of flagged by. Is this on? Can I be heard any better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh yeah, there you go. This is kind of flagged by what James was talking about in terms of sound and dubbing. It just kind of pricked my ear up. If you're trying to make a portfolio, and this I assume could apply to editing as well or something, if you're trying to show off what you're capable of doing, does it matter that you're not necessarily using industry standard software? or specifically what you're trying to show off? Like, what should be the aim of a portfolio?
So can I jump in? A couple of things. Cal Henderson, who works at Savalis, and Savalis is a fabulous audio post-production company in Govan. He started learning his craft. I remember doing trailers at STV 25 years ago, and he did the sound mix in The Nest. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but sound was glorious. So I want to say that. The other thing I want to say is you can use industry standard stuff. DaVinci Resolve is free download if you've got a computer good enough to use it. The Fairlight tool in DaVinci isn't quite Pro Tools, but is fab. I don't know what you think, Paul, but is
Yeah, I think it's great for, especially if you're just starting out. I think it's an amazing tool.
You can pay a lot of money for the studio version, but it's a legit industry piece of software. And I suppose in terms of putting a portfolio together, just showing your capacity, creativity as well as craft, and I think you could probably use that tool to do it and back that up with the evidence of how you went about it somewhere or other would be kind of my fairly straight. Hope that helps.
I think just to add to that, a lot of people mistake what's industry standard for programs and not for what is industry standard. So like script writing, for example, is one that we always get, is what's industry standard for script writing. Most people say Final Draft, which absolutely, but there's so many other programs that now are both free and sort of, like lower paid versions. Fade In's just become a version that Rian Johnson's just used on the Star Wars trilogy and things like that. So that's now, but that's not industry standard. But what is industry standard is PDF. Like 1080p, .mov, that's what's industry standard. So really, how you get there, as long as the work, you get to that work process, at some point you're going to have to, I suppose, if you're going into a specific job, learn it, but either you're learning it via going to, college, university to learn it, or, you again get someone who's got a package who you can use, or, they're going to train you on the job. So there's multiple ways, as long as you've got the skill set to understand sound, again, understanding what makes good sound, what makes a good sound mix, then all it's going to do is things are just going to get maybe a little bigger, a little bit more complicated, but getting to that, ideal mix, just like writing a script, at the end of the day, a story's a story. So it's the output that really matters more than anything.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, is there anything you would like to say in order to encourage young people to enter film and TV industry?
Go for it, I suppose. A simple, unimaginative conclusion.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. Yeah, just do it. Don't feel it's not your place. Keep going until people say no. Don't be annoying, but keep going until people say no. Network. Join the Facebook groups. Look for the opportunities. Make yourself available. Be aware that those looking for free work experience, they're slightly frowned upon these days, because that's seen as something that only those who've got some sort of financial backing are able to do. So there are lots of paid trainee placements now. So look out for those. Look out for those opportunities. Be helpful. Help mates on shoots, and they might help you. But yeah, it's the perfect time to be getting into the industry and to be doing your thing and to be learning. So go for it. Ride the wave, because the wave is definitely here.
One of the students from Clyde College, another educational institution in the city, said shy boys don't get sweeties, which I thought was a really smart reflection. It's still kind of networking is becoming possible again. Here we are in our own small thing, networking, and getting out there and meeting people, and don't be afraid to walk up to strangers and have conversations. Conversations are good.
Yeah. Sorry. No, not at all.
No, just walking in today, there's a certain bat-related movie that we all know is happening in Glasgow at the moment, who have their location signs up. And if you don't know or haven't seen location signs, they're about that big. They're usually neon and they've got an arrow at the end usually, and it'll say lock for location, it'll say base for base, where the office is, where the people who make the decisions are, where the costume and makeup departments are based. And the one outside says crowd, so that won't get you very far. Follow the arrows, turn up at base, don't annoy the security, and say, I'm here to help if it's of use. And you'll be surprised at how many times people are actually taken on after doing that.
I've genuinely got a story about that, which is that on Fast 9, I was doing locations on that, and again, it's an old cliche to say get to know the caterers, get to know the janitors, get to know security. It is such an old cliche, but it genuinely is true. That again, obviously people are there doing a job, but there is always on shoots like that, you are constantly putting out crew calls, and you know, you get a load of people, but then people let you down. And all it took was one gentleman came up, and he was just out of college, and he just said, look, I don't want to annoy anyone, here's my number, here's my name, and here's what I want to do, could you just pass that on? The security guard was, you know, you might get someone who doesn't, but actually passed it on to the location manager, and they were a bit like, okay, well, you know, maybe, and they genuinely stuck to their word. They phoned him, and he was working on it with us the next day, and then it's gone on to do, went up and did Shetland, and it's continued on, and now down in London, but I don't want to put that off, because again, we've got plenty going on here. But just on that point of going for it, absolutely go for it as well. Communication, networking, and there's nothing that stops us now, like absolutely nothing. During the pandemic, we all found ways to continue to somehow work and somehow communicate. Again, it goes back to phones. That thing in your pocket is like your networking device, your camera, your edit. You can edit on your phone if you didn't know. And I think, just from a point of view, obviously, at SE, we do a very practical course, and we're doing something that we hope will push people not just to go out there, but to actually consider their options and their path. But I will say this as someone who works in education as well, a degree will get you nowhere far. It's your attitude towards that. You can have a piece of paper, and that's great. I've got a piece of paper too, but no one ever asked me for that piece of paper. But all those skills I learned, all those people that I met that I was able to do films with, and I got my first studio job because I went and helped someone out on a short film, and then they progressed, and then I kind of progressed off the back of them. So I think just meeting as many people, and don't keep your network too small. Try and branch out, go to any networking events, Facebook groups, all of those things. It's just countless now, I think.
I've sat here for ages. I've not said City of Glasgow College nearly often enough. That's where I work, City of Glasgow College. Our open day's next Saturday. If anybody wants to come along and see the studio and the setup, you'd be very welcome. Just to no disagreement at all.
No.
Just because I'm City of Glasgow College. It's a fabulous place to learn. My apologies.
That was such an interesting session. Thank you very much, Paul, James, Katie, for giving us your time today. Thanks to the audience for coming, and enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you.
Can I just say thanks to you both too? You led the conversation really well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.